Blue nitrile gloves slide a rack of glass vials into a machine. Inside each vial rests a pinch of pale gray sediment. It was pulled from the ocean floor. Under a microscope, this mud reveals millions of tiny shells. These are benthic foraminifera. We use them to look back tens of millions of years. By measuring oxygen isotopes trapped in these shells, the mass spectrometer reads the temperature of ancient oceans. It builds a continuous graph of Earth's climate. The line oscillates. It shows violent thermal spikes and deep glacial plunges. This is a synthesis, built from multiple documented cases. Every time the climate line shifts, life on land is forced to adapt or die. How did 66 million years of extreme, relentless climate volatility transform a small group of asteroid survivors into the giants of the Ice Age? Present-day procedure. Dramatized visualization. Researchers take samples of this boundary clay to the lab. They test its chemical composition. They find something alien. The clay is saturated with iridium. This element is extremely rare on Earth's surface. Yet, it is common in meteorites. This chemical signature is our physical anchor. It indicates that a sudden, extraterrestrial event abruptly ended the Cretaceous period. SRC-01, Alvarez, L. W. et al. 1980, Deep Past, K. P. G. Extinction, about 66 million years ago. The sky tears open. The Chicxulub asteroid strikes the shallow waters of what is now the Gulf of Mexico. It is roughly the size of a large city, about 10 to 15 kilometers across. The impact vaporizes the seabed instantly. It excavates a crater deep into the crust. A colossal column of pulverized rock and sulfur violently erupts. It punches straight through to the edge of space. Gravity then pulls this molten debris back down. Trillions of glass-like microtectites rain across the globe. As they re-enter the atmosphere, they radiate intense heat. The surface briefly becomes a furnace. Massive wildfires ignite. Diagram. Evidence spaced. The immediate thermal shock is devastating. But the long-term consequences are far worse. Soot and aerosols suspended in the stratosphere form a dense veil. The sun is choked out. Global temperatures plummet. We cannot tell exactly how many months this deep impact winter lasted from this evidence. What it does support is a catastrophic collapse of photosynthesis. The engine of life grinds to a halt. Without sunlight, the marine phytoplankton die. Without phytoplankton, the entire oceanic food web unravels. The giant marine reptiles perish. On land, the forests wither. Without vegetation, the massive herbivorous dinosaurs starve. They leave nothing for the apex predators to hunt. The collapse is rapid. In this starving world, physical size is a death sentence. Massive bodies guarantee extinction. They simply require more calories than a broken ecosystem can provide. Present-day, museum collections. A researcher adjusts the focus dial on a microscope. A fragmented piece of fossilized jaw sits in the light. It is incredibly small. It could balance on a fingertip. This belongs to an early mammal. Much like Purgatorius. Using fine picks, the preparator clears ancient sand from the tiny teeth. We read survival in these microscopic ridges. For 160 million years, mammals were locked into this exact scale. They were nocturnal. They stayed small to avoid heavy tread and snapping jaws. Now, that forced constraint becomes their ultimate salvation. Deep past, Paleocene, about 65 million years ago. Reconstruction. The landscapes are charred and quiet. Broadleaf forests have been reduced to ash. Yet, movement continues in the shadows. A lineage of tiny mammals navigates the debris. They survive the aftermath because they require very few calories to keep running. The shape of their teeth reveals their secret. They are not specialized. They are dietary generalists. They crunch on insects. They chew through tough seeds. They eat whatever the ruined world leaves behind. Their small frames provide another crucial advantage. They can dig. They shelter in burrows beneath the tangled roots of fallen trees. Underground, they are insulated. They avoid the worst of the extreme temperature swings. They wait out the fires. They weather the freezing darkness. The K.P.G. extinction acts as a ruthless physical filter. It sweeps away the large, the specialized, and the exposed. It leaves behind the small, the adaptable, and the hidden. These are our ancestors. They did not inherit the earth because they were evolutionary superiors. They were not patiently waiting to rule. They inherited it because they fit through a catastrophic bottleneck. They were the right size, with the right diet. Now, the slate is wiped clean. The surviving mammals face a vacant planet. But the Earth is not finished changing. The quiet of the Paleocene is temporary. The climate is preparing to snap. It will test these survivors in an entirely new crucible present-day, Marine Corps repository. A technician wearing blue nitrile gloves carefully slides a rack of glass vials into a mass spectrometer. Inside each vial rests a pinch of pale gray sediment. It was pulled from the ocean floor. It looks like ordinary mud. But under a microscope, this sediment reveals millions of tiny, intricate shells. These are benthic foraminifera. They lived and died on the seafloor millions of years ago. As they grew, they built their shells from calcium carbonate. They absorbed oxygen from the surrounding seawater. This is our time machine. By measuring the ratio of different oxygen isotopes trapped in these microscopic shells, the mass spectrometer reads the temperature of the ancient oceans. SRC02, Zachos. J. et al. 2001, diagram. Evidence-based. The data points from these mud cores build a continuous graph of Earth's climate history. It is known as the Zachos curve. Moving forward in time from the asteroid impact, the line traces a gradual warming trend. Then, it suddenly jolts upward. It is a violent, vertical spike. This is the Paleocene-Eocene thermal maximum, or PETM. Global temperatures skyrocketed. They increased by roughly 5 to 8 degrees Celsius in a geological blink of an eye. Mud cores act as a deep time thermometer. They show the entire planet caught a sudden, blistering fever. SRC02, Zachos. J. et al. 2001. We cannot tell the exact trigger of the carbon release from this evidence. What it does support is a massive, rapid global thermal spike. The chemical signature in the shells points to a colossal injection of light carbon into the atmosphere and oceans. The exact trigger remains debated. Some models point to massive volcanic eruptions in the North Atlantic. Other models suggest the sudden thawing of frozen methane hydrates on the sea floor. Regardless of the spark, the result was a suffocating greenhouse. The oceans absorbed so much carbon that they acidified. This triggered a deep-sea mass extinction. But on land, this extreme heat acted as a ruthless evolutionary catalyst. SRC02, Zachos. J. et al. 2001, deep past, PETM, about 56 million years ago. Reconstruction. A dense, humid rainforest sprawls under a heavy sky. The air is thick. Broadleaf tropical plants and towering canopy trees stretch across the continents. There are no ice caps. The Arctic is covered in swampy, subtropical forests. This global hothouse removes the frozen barriers that once isolated land masses. High-latitude land bridges emerge. They connect North America, Europe, and Asia across the Arctic Circle. A vast, green corridor opens. The descendants of the tiny asteroid survivors seize this opportunity. Driven by the heat, they migrate rapidly. They spread across the northern hemisphere in a sudden wave. In the fossil record of this thermal spike, we find the ancestors of modern hoofed mammals. Their bodies are small and multi-toed. We also find the earliest true primates. They are adapted to life high in the dense canopy. The mammals are radiating. They transform from bottom dwellers into a wildly diverse array of shapes. They claim the forests. But as terrestrial niches fill up, competition grows fierce. Some lineages are pushed to the margins of the continents. Here, they look back toward the warm, shallow seas. Deep past, Eocene, about 50 million years ago. Reconstruction. The edge of a shallow, sun-drenched estuary laps against a muddy shore. This is modern-day Pakistan. The climate remains sweltering. Mangroves tangle at the water's edge. A creature about the size of a wolf wades through the shallows. It has a long snout lined with sharp teeth and a heavy tail. It paddles with strong limbs. They end in hoof-like toes rather than claws. It moves with a strange rhythm. It dives beneath the surface to snatch a fish. It returns to the muddy bank to rest. This is Pachycetus. It is an ambush predator perfectly adapted to the shoreline. It is also the earliest known ancestor of the whales. SRC03, Gingerich. P.D. et al. 2001, present-day, Paleontology Prep Lab. A preparator grips an air scribe. A high-pitched whine fills the room. The metal tip vibrates rapidly. It chips away hard, sandy rock from a small, dark fossil. The preparator wears magnification loupes. They work with agonizing precision to free the delicate curves of the bone. It is an astragalus, one of the main bones of the ankle. It is no larger than a walnut. Yet, it holds the key to one of the greatest evolutionary transitions in mammalian history. It belonged to an early whale. SRC03, Gingerich. P.D. et al. 2001, diagram. Evidence-based. The shape of this bone is distinct. We compare the fossil to the ankle bones of modern mammals. It features a unique, double pulley structure. This shape acts as a hinge. It restricts movement to a forward and backward plane, providing strength for running or leaping. We cannot tell the exact soft tissue appearance or coloration from this evidence. What it does support is the biomechanical link between early whales and terrestrial hoofed mammals. This specific ankle structure is the defining physical trait of the artiodactyls. It groups the early whales not with seals, but with the ancestors of hippos, pigs, and deer. SRC03, Gingerich. P.D. et al. 2001, deep past, Eocene, about 40 million years ago. Reconstruction. Over millions of years. The descendants of Pachycetus commit entirely to the water. The selective pressure of the hothouse oceans pulls them deeper. The seas are teeming with food. They are free from the giant marine reptiles that died with the dinosaurs. Their front limbs slowly flatten into flippers. Their hind limbs shrink. They become useless for walking. They are reduced to tiny, internal knobs of bone. Their nostrils migrate backward, becoming blowholes. They transform into sleek, fully aquatic navigators. The mammals have reclaimed the seas. But the global hothouse is living on borrowed time. Deep beneath the crust, tectonic plates are tearing a continent apart. The Earth is about to plunge into a deep freeze diagram. Evidence-based. The map of the southern hemisphere is shifting. For tens of millions of years, Antarctica was tethered to South America and Australia. It was a polar continent. Yet, it was temperate and covered in dense forests. Now, the tectonic plates pull apart. The land masses tear free. A deep, open channel of water forms between Antarctica and South America. This is the Drake Passage. For the first time, ocean currents can flow completely unimpeded around the South Pole. The Antarctic Circumpolar Current is born. It forms a massive, swirling barrier of cold water. It physically blocks warm tropical currents from reaching the pole. Antarctica is plunged into absolute thermal isolation. Diagram. Evidence-based. We look back to the Zachos climate curve. At approximately 34 million years ago, the line suddenly plummets. The temperature drops drastically. Changing ocean currents froze the planet. The continuous deep-sea sediment record shows that the global greenhouse is over. Massive ice sheets rapidly form across Antarctica. They lock up millions of cubic kilometers of fresh water. Sea levels fall globally. The air grows cold and dry. This is the Eocene-Oligocene transition. It marks the permanent shift from a hothouse Earth to an icehouse Earth. SRC02, Zachos. J. et al. 2001, Deep Past, Oligocene, about 30 million years ago. Reconstruction. The dense canopy forests of the Eocene are dying. Deprived of heat and moisture, the broadleaf jungles retreat toward the equator. In their wake, the landscapes open up. Vast stretches of scrubland and open woodland emerge. The trees are spaced further apart. They are separated by wide patches of low-lying vegetation. The deep shadows are gone. Herbivores can no longer hide easily in the dense foliage. They must cross open ground to find food. The mammalian response to this exposed world is dramatic. If you cannot hide, you must become too large to be attacked. This is the era of gigantism. A massive shadow moves through the sparse woodland. It is Paraceratherium. It is a hornless relative of the rhinoceros. It has thick, pillar-like legs and an elongated neck. This allows it to strip leaves from high branches. Models suggest it weighed on the order of 15 to 20 tons. That is roughly the weight of 3 adult African elephants. We cannot tell the exact population size of Paraceratherium from this evidence. What it does support is a biological trend toward gigantism in open woodlands. The extreme scale of this creature is a direct physiological response to the changing climate. A larger body retains heat more efficiently. It digests massive quantities of low-quality forage. It deters the growing numbers of terrestrial predators. Present-day, field site. A paleobotanist sits on a dusty outcrop. She sketches a stratigraphic section into a waterproof notebook. She uses a hand lens to examine a fossilized leaf trapped in the pale rock. The shape of the leaves is changing. The broad, smooth-edged leaves of the tropical hothouse are vanishing. They are being replaced by smaller leaves with jagged edges. These are adapted to cooler, drier seasons. The Earth's thermostat has been permanently turned down. The open woodlands of the Oligocene have forged the giants. But the drying trend is accelerating. The remaining forests are dying back further. They will soon be replaced by something sharper. It will trigger an anatomical arms race unlike anything the mammals have faced before. Deep Past, Miocene, about 15 million years ago. Reconstruction. The horizon stretches out endlessly. The trees have retreated to deep valleys. The vast, open plains are covered in a new kind of green. It is grass. Continuous cooling and drying favored tough, low-growing vegetation. The expansion of these C4 grasslands transforms the continents. It looks like an infinite banquet. But this new environment is a trap. It is incredibly hostile to the animals consuming it. Diagram. Evidence-based. We see a microscopic view of a grass blade. Inside the plant cells are tiny, rigid structures. They are made of silica. They are called phytoliths. They function like microscopic shards of glass. Furthermore, grass grows close to the dusty earth. Grazing pulls up grit along with the plant. Eating grass is essentially chewing on sandpaper. For Oligocene browsers, this diet is lethal. The silica rapidly wears down their tooth enamel. Once the teeth wear flat, the animal starves. Present-day, museum collections. A researcher pulls open a heavy steel drawer. Inside sits a chronological sequence of fossil horse teeth. He places a small Eocene tooth on a lab mat. He lowers digital calipers over the fossil. He measures the height of the crown. The caliper screen displays a small number. The early tooth is low and blunt. He moves down the line. He measures teeth from the Oligocene. And then the Miocene. With each step forward, the calipers open wider. The crowns are getting taller. Diagram. Evidence-based. This physical measurement tracks the evolution of the Equus lineage. As the forests shrank and grass expanded, horses had to adapt. The evolution of high-crowned teeth tracks the spread of these abrasive habitats. The teeth grew taller. They extended deep into the jawbone. They slowly erupted outward over the animal's lifetime to compensate for the relentless grinding. Teeth adapt to the environment. The calipers show that the horse's skull was fundamentally reshaped by the spread of silica. SRC04, Stromberg. C. A. E. 2006. We cannot tell the exact grazing habits of every equid from this evidence. What it does support is a broad morphological adaptation to abrasive silica in grasses. But the teeth were only half the battle. The grasslands offered no cover. To survive the plains, the horses had to run. Their legs lengthened. The multiple toes of their forest-dwelling ancestors fused. They reduced until the animal was running on a single hoof. They became machines built for speed. Deep past, Miocene. Reconstruction. The herbivores are not the only ones changing. Predators are caught in the same evolutionary arms race. Prey becomes faster. Herds gather in the millions on the open plains. The carnivores must adapt. Ancestors of modern cats and dogs develop deeper chests for endurance. They evolve specialized limbs for ambush attacks. The Miocene plains resemble the modern African savanna. They are locked in a brutal cycle of pursuit and evasion. The continents are stable. But the tectonic plates are moving again. Two massive land masses are on a collision course present day, Deep Sea Core Lab. A researcher peers at a glowing monitor. They examine the chemical signatures of sediment layers pulled from the Caribbean Sea and the Pacific Ocean. For millions of years, the isotopic signatures on both sides were identical. Water flowed freely between North and South America. It mixed the oceans. But as the researcher scrolls up the core data, the lines diverge near the 3 million year mark. The Pacific and Caribbean signatures split apart. The flow of water was blocked. Tectonic uplift and volcanic activity pushed the seafloor upward. It created a solid land bridge. The Isthmus of Panama had closed. SRC05, Woodburn. M. O. 2010. Deep past, Pliocene, about 3 million years ago. Reconstruction. A narrow, volcanic strip of land rises above the waves. It completely connects North and South America. For marine life, it is an impenetrable wall. But for terrestrial mammals, it is an open door. For tens of millions of years, South America was an island continent. Its mammals evolved in total isolation. They produced bizarre forms like massive armored glyptodonts, giant ground sloths, and marsupial predators. North America was periodically connected to Eurasia. It forged robust lineages of horses, camels, dogs, and cats. Now, the cage is open. Diagram. Evidence-based. We map the Great American Biotic Interchange. Arrows swoop north and south across the newly formed isthmus. It is a chaotic mixing of faunas. Robust North American predators, like the saber-toothed smilodon and ancestors of modern wolves, push south. The heavily armored sloths and armadillos push north. We cannot tell every single species that crossed the land bridge from this evidence. What it does support is a massive, asymmetric exchange of fauna between the Americas. The fossil record shows North American mammals successfully colonized the South. They drove many isolated native species to extinction. Biology is dictated by geology. Tectonics forced a biological cage match. SRC05, Woodburn. M. O. 2010. Deep past, Pliocene. Reconstruction. The closing of Panama does more than mix animals. It breaks the global climate machinery. The warm, equatorial waters of the Atlantic can no longer flow into the Pacific. Instead, they are forced northward. The Gulf Stream intensifies. It pumps massive amounts of warm, moisture-laden air toward the Arctic. Some models suggest this extra moisture fell as snow. It fueled the rapid growth of the northern ice sheets. Diagram. Evidence-based. We return to the Zetschos climate curve. The slow cooling of the past 30 million years suddenly fractures. The line begins to oscillate wildly. It jumps up and down in rapid, jagged spikes. The Earth's climate is destabilizing. The warm, stable periods are becoming shorter. The cold snaps are becoming deeper. The long summer of the Cenozoic is finally over. The ice is coming. Mammals will be pushed to the absolute limits of their biology. The Ice Age begins deep past Pleistocene, about 100,000 years ago. Reconstruction. A biting wind howls across a treeless plain. The ground is locked in permafrost. A massive shape moves through the snow. It is Mammuthus primigenius, the woolly mammoth. Thick fur hangs to the ground. It insulates a dense layer of fat. Long, curved tusks sweep forward. They clear snow from the dry grasses below. This is the mammoth steppe. It stretches from Europe across Asia into North America. It is a frozen world. Yet, it supports an astonishing density of giant mammals. This is the ultimate icehouse Earth, present-day, radiocarbon dating lab. A technician uses a sterile scalpel. They scrape a tiny sample of bone from a fossilized mammoth femur. The bone is treated with acid to extract preserved collagen. This sample is burned and analyzed. The machine counts the remaining atoms of carbon-14. Unlike deep-sea mud cores, radiocarbon dating is a precision tool. It maps the age of a bone down to a few decades. But it has a hard limit. It only looks back about 50,000 years. Within that narrow window, the lab data reveals a catastrophic collapse diagram. Evidence-based. We plot radiocarbon dates of megafauna bones on a timeline. The mammoths, giant ground sloths, and saber-toothed cats thrive during the deep cold. But as the timeline approaches the end of the last glacial maximum, the data points vanish. The giants disappear from the fossil record. They vanish almost simultaneously across multiple continents. This is the Pleistocene megafaunal extinction. Scientists have fiercely debated the cause. Was it the violent warming as the ice sheets collapsed? Or was it the sudden arrival of a novel predator, deep past Pleistocene, about 15,000 years ago? Reconstruction. The climate is swinging violently. The ice sheets are melting. Sea levels are rising. The dry mammoth steppe is rapidly replaced by wet bogs and expanding forests. The megafauna are highly specialized for the cold. Their habitats are shrinking. At this exact moment of maximum stress, a new shadow moves across the steppe. Humans, Homo sapiens, expand rapidly out of Africa and Eurasia. They push into the Americas. They are armed with cooperative hunting strategies and projectile weapons. Diagram. Evidence-based. We overlay the radiocarbon dates of human arrival with the disappearance of the megafauna. The overlap is undeniable. But it is not perfectly uniform. We cannot assign exact blame percentages from this evidence. What it does support is a deadly synergy. The prevailing consensus points to intersecting pressures. Rapid climate shifts fractured the habitats. This lowered the population sizes of the megafauna. Human hunters applied an unrelenting pressure. They were adaptable and not reliant on one food source. The slow-breeding giants simply could not withstand this combination. The overkill debate yields to synergy. SRC 06, Koch, P. L. and Barnowski, A. D. 2006, deep past, Holocene, about 11,700 years ago. Reconstruction. The ice retreats. The Earth settles into a brief, warm interglacial period. The mammoth steppe is gone. The giant sloths and saber-toothed cats are ghosts in the permafrost. The massive bodies that defined the Ice Age have been wiped away. In the quiet, warming landscapes, one large mammal remains dominant. It survived the cold. It crossed the land bridges. It adapted to every biome on Earth. The human lineage did not survive because we were the largest. Like the burrowing mammals that survived the K.P.G. asteroid, humans survived as ultimate generalists. We used our intelligence to build tools, wear skins, and manipulate fire. The 66 million years of extreme climate volatility acted as a forge. It shaped the mammals through the hothouse, the deep freeze, and the brutal yo-yo of the ice ages. We are the survivors of that crucible. But the Zachos curve has not stopped moving. The climate engine that shaped us is shifting once again. What remains unknown is how the biosphere will adapt to the next thermal spike.